Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder what really shapes how we see other people? We often think about personality in terms of traits like being shy or outgoing. But what if the way we judge the similarity between people tells us even more about personality itself? That is the big idea behind a cool new study we're diving into today. Forget just listing traits. This research suggests we can understand personality structure by looking at how similar or different people seem to be to each other, just by the way we naturally perceive them. It's like mapping out personalities based on perceived closeness, not just on descriptive words. For a long time, scientists have used what is called the Psycholexical Hypothesis. This basically means they look at words, adjectives, and phrases that describe personality. They collect all these words, have people rate themselves or others using them, and then use statistics to find the main personality patterns, like the famous Big Five traits. Think of it as building a personality map using words as your landmarks. But like any approach, this word-based method has its drawbacks. Some scientists argue that by starting with words, we might be accidentally forcing the results into boxes that were already created by those words. It is like asking someone to describe a color, but only giving them a limited palette of pre-selected colors to choose from. You might miss out on entirely new shades, or how those colors truly relate to each other in a broader spectrum. So, what if we tried a different starting point? Instead of words, what about feelings of similarity? This study introduces something called the Psychogeometric Hypothesis of personality. It says that the way we perceive how similar or dissimilar people are to each other is the structure of personality. It's like saying, instead of using words to describe a landscape, we can understand the landscape by looking at how close or far apart different places are from each other. The core idea is that personality differences create a kind of invisible psychological space. People who are similar in personality are seen as close together in this space, and those who are different are seen as farther apart. This geometry of similarity, the researchers believe, reveals the underlying structure of personality without us having to predefine what those personality traits are through words. It's a way to uncover how our minds naturally organize information about people. So, how did they test this fascinating idea? They gathered about 204 people. Each person was asked to think of 15 adults they knew well, plus themselves. Then, for every single possible pair of these people, they had to rate how similar their personalities were on a scale from not similar at all to extremely similar. It's like being a social architect, mapping out relationships based on perceived personality closeness. Scroll a total of 204 Italian-speaking participants, each listed 15 well-known adults plus themselves, rated all 120 pairwise personality similarities, and completed personality questionnaires providing self and informant reports. Scroll, imagine rating 120 pairs for each person. That's a lot of judgment calls. After they did all this similarity rating, they also filled out questionnaires about personality traits. And in some cases, they had friends rate them to get an outside view. Scroll judge specific dissimilarity matrices were analyzed through ordinal, non-metric, multidimensional scaling, with dimensionality selected through stress criteria and permutation testing. Scroll now for the fancy part how they made sense of all those similarity ratings. They used a statistical technique called multidimensional scaling, or MDS. Think of MDs as a way to take all those how similar are they ratings and turn them into a map. It tries to place each person on a chart so that the distances between them on the map match the similarity ratings they were given. If two people were rated as very similar, they'd be placed close together on the map. If they were rated as very different, they'd be far apart. They looked at how many dimensions or axes were needed to make the best map, kind of like needing length, width, and height to describe a 3D space. Scroll results supported the median 5-dimensional solution, indicating that personality similarity judgments contain systematic geometric structure beyond chance. Scroll, and what did they find? Drumroll please. They discovered that, on average, people's similarity ratings could be best represented by a 5. Dimensional map. This is super important, because it means the way we judge similarity isn't just random guessing. It has a clear, organized structure, and that structure seems to be about 5 main underlying dimensions. Scroll Big 5 and honesty. Humility traits predicted similarity beyond demographics. With honesty, humility showing incremental explanatory value beyond the Big 5 scroll. They also checked if these similarity maps lined up with established personality traits. They found that traits like the Big 5 and a trait called honesty, humility actually helped predict why people judge certain individuals as more or less similar. Interestingly, honesty Humility seemed to add extra explanatory power, meaning it captured something about perceived similarity that the standard Big Five traits didn't fully cover. This suggests that things like sincerity and fairness play a unique role in how we group people mentally. Scroll established trait models captured only a limited portion of psychogeometric variance, suggesting that similarity-based approaches may reveal aspects of personality organization that are only partially represented in conventional descriptor-based models. Scroll, but here is where it gets really interesting. While the traditional personality traits did a good job predicting some of the similarity judgments, they didn't explain everything. This means that the geometry of personality, the way we instinctively group people by similarity, contains information that goes beyond the words we use to describe personality. It suggests that our intuitive understanding of personality might be richer and more complex than our current word-based models can capture. Scroll the PGH is designed not to supplant the psycholexical approach, but to complement it. Scroll. So, what does this all mean for us? The researchers aren't saying the old ways are wrong. They see this new psychogeometric approach as a way to add to our understanding of personality. It's like having two different tools to explore the same territory. One tool uses words, and the other uses the perceived relationships between things. Scroll's study opens a complementary route for investigating personality structure from the geometry of interpersonal similarity judgments. This new approach allows us to look at personality from a completely different angle. It's less about ticking boxes for traits and more about how we intuitively categorize and understand people in relation to each other. It might help us discover new personality dimensions that we haven't even given names to, yet dimensions that are so fundamental to how we perceive each other that they shape our judgments of similarity even before we articulate them into words. Scroll's study addressed two main aims. Aim 1. The first aim was to identify the number and structure of the latent dimensions spontaneously used to evaluate individual personalities. To really nail down the number of dimensions, they used a clever statistical trick. They compared the actual stress, which is basically how much distortion there is in the map of the created personality maps, to maps made from random data. If their actual personality maps had much lower stress than the random ones, it meant they were capturing real patterns. Scroll figure 3. Scree plot of observed versus permuted stress -1 values across dimensionalities. 1 to 15. This figure shows that the stress of their personality maps stayed consistently lower than what you'd expect from pure random chance for up to about 5 dimensions. This is strong evidence that people's similarity judgments have a real, organized structure. Scroll table 3. Proportions of optimal dimensions by selection criteria. And the results confirm that across all the people they studied, the best way to map their similarity judgments was usually around 5 dimensions. It wasn't exactly 5 for everyone, but the median or the middle value was 5. This is pretty neat because it aligns with some existing theories about the number of broad personality dimensions. Scroll aim 2. The second aim was to assess the extent to which perceived personality similarities align with established models of personality structure, namely the Big Five and honesty humility within the Hexico framework above, and beyond basic demographic characteristics. Then came the second big question. How much do these perceived similarities relate to the personality traits we already know about, like the Big Five and even things like gender and age? They use complex statistical models to see if differences in gender, age, or personality traits between two people predicted whether they would be seen as similar or not. Scroll table 4, LMS predicting perceived similarities from perceived differences in demographics and personality traits. Binary predictors, not standardized teacher. This table shows the results of those complex models. Basically, it confirms that if two people are different in gender, age, or personality, they are judged as less similar. It's like when you're trying to figure out if two people are friends, you might first notice if they're the same gender or age. But then you also consider if they seem to have similar personalities. The largest unique marginal part R2 values were observed for agreeableness, honesty, humility and extroversion, followed by gender and age range, whereas context and neuroticism contributed comparatively little unique variance. The study found that traits like agreeableness, being nice and cooperative, honesty, humility being sincere and fair, and extroversion being outgoing were particularly important in making people seem similar or different. Gender and age also played a role. But interestingly, things like how much people agreed with each other politically or their educational background, which they called context, didn't seem to matter as much in these similarity judgments. Neuroticism, which is about emotional stability, also contributed less uniquely than the others. Scroll incremental contribution of honesty, humility, scroll, and that honesty, humility trait, it really stood out. The researchers found that it explained a significant chunk of why people judged others, as similar even after accounting for the big 5 traits and basic demographics. This suggests that our gut feeling about someone's character, whether they're trustworthy and fair, is a really powerful factor in whether we see them as similar to others. Scroll, the proportion of variance in raw similarity ratings explained by the fixed effects was modest across all model specifications. Scroll now, even though they found significant results, the amount of similarity in people's judgments that was explained by these known traits was relatively modest. This is actually a good thing in this context. It means there is still a lot of room for new discoveries. The researchers believe this unexplained variance might be due to personality dimensions that we haven't fully captured with our current word-based personality models. Scroll, the psychogeometric approach, unlike its psycholexical counterpart, can inherently discover novel personality dimensions yet to be formalized in existing taxonomies. Scroll, this is the really exciting part, because this approach starts with similarity judgments rather than predefined words. It has the potential to uncover entirely new ways that personalities are structured, ways that we haven't yet put into neat categories or invented names for. It's like a discovery tool for the landscape of personality. Scroll theoretical implications, limitations, and future studies scroll. So, what are the limitations of this study? Well, they couldn't directly compare the maps from different people because everyone rated a different set of friends. It's like trying to compare different people's drawings of the same city without them ever looking at each other's. Drawings for future work, they want to get around this by having people rate some of the same key individuals, which would allow them to create a single, shared psychogeometric map of personality. Scroll beyond these potential extensions. Another limitation of this first study is the almost exclusive informant setting, but the reason is only practical scroll. Another point is that they mostly relied on people rating others they knew well. It would be interesting to see if this holds true for strangers, or if we use different similarity judgments for people we don't know. Also, they used the short measure for honesty humility, so a more thorough measure might show even stronger effects. Scroll conclusion, scrolling conclusion. This study is a really promising start for the psychogeometric hypothesis of personality. It shows that how we judge people's similarities to each other isn't random. It follows a pattern, and that pattern has about 5 main dimensions. These dimensions are partly explained by known personality traits, but they also contain new information that our current linguistic descriptions of personality might be missing. This work suggests that looking at the geometry of perceived similarity is a powerful new way to explore the complex world of personality. It is a reminder that the way we intuitively understand and relate to others is a rich source of scientific insight. And there is still so much more to discover about the hidden structures of the human mind. What do you think about this idea? Does it make sense that similarity is a core part of personality structure? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into the science of personality, be sure to like this video and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more explorations into the fascinating world of psychology. Well, see you in the next one.